When you think about the most powerful weapons in Phantom Forces, what usually comes to mind? The M107? Hollowpoint HK416? Literally any auto shotty? I bet one thing you didn't think about was a grenade. Grenades are without a doubt one of the most powerful weapons in Phantom Forces. Being the only explosive weapon in the entire game, these little demons can eliminate entire teams with the flick of your blocky wrists. And sometimes they can even be an important source of comedy in Phantom Force's usual sweaty and repetitive gameplay. But despite being so powerful, I don't think I've seen a weapon so underutilized and full of potential. And as a person with quite the experience with these little powerhouses, I think it's time to teach people what grenades are truly capable of. Grenades in Phantom Forces have different niche effects that can be categorized. So the first step to understanding grenades is getting a good understanding of every type of grenade. Let's start off real simple with the standard grenades. These are grenades that are a jack of all trades, not necessarily specializing in any field, but they're certainly not bad in any way either. A close follow-up to the standard grenades are the bouncy grenades. While they have similar stats to the standard grenades, they have the niche effect of being a lot more bouncy than usual, which can be useful in certain situations. A little bit similar to these are the range grenades. Now, we're not talking about damage range, no, we're talking about throwing range, as these grenades are the ones that can be thrown really far. These grenades can be good for early round surprises on game modes like King of the Hill or Hardpoint. Now onto the ones that are probably the most appealing to a large majority of you people watching this, power grenades. The power grenades are usually pretty slow and aren't able to travel that far, but also pack an insane kill radius that'll make all other grenades look like cheap fireworks in comparison. And lastly, we have the impact grenades that, as you can probably guess, are grenades that blow up upon impact with anything, except for actual players for some reason. But before we move on, it's also important to note there are a few grenades that don't necessarily have a special effect, but rather a special little gimmick. Take the Semtex for example. This grenade doesn't really fit in with the other effect categories, but it does have the unique gimmick of being able to stick to walls, and also having the most obvious bomb beeping sound known to man, making non-cooked Semtex grenades the world's easiest thing to avoid. Now that we know the general grenade effects in Phantom Forces, it's time to categorize them from offensive to defensive, as not all grenades are created for the same purpose. The offensive category are grenades that have good mobility and fuse time that allow for aggressive use. The mixed grenades are those that play alright on both ends with both offensive and defensive potential, and it all pretty much comes down to the user. Meanwhile, defensive grenades are good to use on game modes like KOF and Hardpoint, where defending one area is everything.
So once you pull the pin, as long as you keep this handle pushed down, you're perfectly safe.
Alright, enough theory fodder. Now let's talk about how to actually use grenades properly. Grenades are all about technique if you want to use them effectively. This excludes tossing 3 random nades at the start of every life and getting a few lucky kills here and there. So let's start off with the basics. Grenades have 3 ways you can directly interact with them. You can cook them, bounce them off walls, and jumping can give your nades a tiny bit of extra height to help reach high up places. Cooking is by far one of the most basic, but also one of the most important fundamentals of grenades. Basically, grenades have a fuse time. This time determines how long it takes from when you pull the pin and throw your grenade till it explodes. Now, you usually throw a grenade by pressing G. To cook a grenade, you actually just have to press and hold G. Now, for beginners, I recommend keeping an eye on your crosshair. Your crosshair will do a little flick every time a second passes when you have a grenade in your hand. This is to help you count how many seconds are left before your grenade explodes. Although make sure to start counting from 0, or else you might end up counting a second ahead. Learning how to cook grenades is essential because a key aspect of using grenades is timing. This is because most grenade kills are timing it to where your grenade explodes the exact moment it reaches the enemy. But to help clear some confusion, here's a brief explanation of the timing at different ranges. For close range, you don't want any more than a second. Your grenade has a lot of initial speed in the air and can travel further than you'd expect in that single second. But if your enemy is around mid-range, try to time it so your grenade has 1.5 seconds left before blowing up. This is usually the sweet spot for most grenade kills around this range. For long range, I find 2.5 to 3 seconds to be what works best. Even though grenades travel pretty fast, it still needs a bit of time to reach your enemy. But don't worry, the grenade timing isn't something you can just learn immediately. You'll get used to it over time through a lot of practice. Now, what if your enemy isn't directly visible but you know where they are? Well, that's where wall bouncing comes into play. See, most grenades when they hit a wall usually bounce right back. You can use this to your advantage when trying to kill enemies behind corners and other walls. Although remember to throw with caution, as sometimes they might bounce right back at you, and that usually doesn't end too well. However, sometimes the enemy isn't on ground level with you, so for situations like that, you want to make sure you remember to jump when throwing your grenade upwards, because that extra height can help your grenade reach areas it couldn't originally reach before. Also, it's very important to remember that you don't have to keep an eye on whether your grenade hits or not. you usually either use the explosion audio or an obvious missing enemy kill cue to tell that your grenade missed. In fact, you pretty much want to keep on doing what you were originally doing after you throw your grenade. No need to admire your throw like a golf player because that will get you killed. And of course, the last basic technique I'm sure most are familiar with is suicide bombing. See, grenades are actually a pretty good last resort that can help make sure that if you're gonna die, you're damn well gonna take someone with you. Now let's talk about more advanced grenade tech. Starting off with one of my favorites, grenade trapping. This is a situational technique only meant for moments when you know someone is chasing you. The execution is actually quite simple. You basically just plant a grenade behind a corner or a wall, or if you're in a bit of a rush, throw it against a wall while running backwards. The grenade acts like an unfortunate surprise for the person chasing you. Again, this is a situational technique, but still one I think is worth practicing. Now believe it or not, there aren't actually that many advanced techniques as the grenade is a pretty simple weapon. But one crucial technique that requires a bit of practice to even properly understand is altering how far your grenade travels. See, in some situations you won't really have time to cook a grenade perfectly, and obviously you don't want to throw your grenade right past your enemy, so this is where the interesting part comes in. See, by throwing your grenade onto the ground, depending on your angle, it will actually travel a lower distance than just throwing it at the nearest object. This is because grenades usually have a set amount of time they can roll until they come to a complete standstill. So by throwing your grenade onto the ground earlier, your grenade will not only lose a lot of its original speed from the throw, but also start its little rolling timer, meaning you can get some grenades to travel a very low distance, which can be incredibly useful for tight close range situations where overthrowing it will result in death. But all this talk about how to use grenades is only so useful if you know how to fight against these little monsters. See, unlike what you think, hiding behind a small cover like props or small walls can save you from certain death. And trust me, you can hide behind many things because the grenade hitbox is pretty weird. Sometimes you can still be safe despite being able to see the grenade clearly. Hell, even things like glass can save you from grenades. But what if you're fighting against someone who already watched this video and you have a strong hunch they're going to try and grenade you? For situations like that, you either want to try and get right up in their face, or if they're a bit further away, try to seek cover behind small props or walls like we just talked about. But what if there's no immediately available cover? Well, not to worry, as unless the enemy is using bundle charges, most grenades don't have a ridiculously large kill radius, giving you a good chance to get some distance in. To put this into perspective, I'm going to show you 3 distances from a few different grenade types just to visualize how far grenades actually kill. Now, another important question is, how do you actually tell if you're about to get grenaded or not? Well, don't worry, because the signs are actually quite simple. If you have an interaction with an enemy and they're taking noticeably longer to peek again, then it's more than likely that they're timing a grenade, so try to use that knowledge to your advantage. Alright, now that we've covered all the fundamentals of nade play and how to properly deal with opposing grenade users, let's jump into some neat tips and tricks to help improve your nade play even further. First off, it's important to know when and when not to actually use grenades. You see, grenades are entirely situational and they likely aren't something you're going to be using every single life. So if you use grenades that have a reserve of 3 or more, tossing a single one off of spawn like you probably already do doesn't hurt. Just make sure to always have 2 or more grenades available. But now let's talk about how you actually use those 2 other grenades you just saved. If you ever hear a barrage of footsteps approaching like the entire enemy team is right there on their way to kill you, those are one of the absolute peak times you should use a grenade. Another tip is to always spot people before using grenades, because chances are they might approach you before your grenade is ready, and spotting them gives you that important knowledge of where and what the enemy is doing. It also makes it easier to actually land the grenade kill, as knowing where a player is much easier than just randomly guessing. Also, with that said, it's very important to remember that how high up you have to throw or the whole timing gig isn't something you'll learn immediately. Trust me and take my word on this, it's all something you'll learn through lots and lots of practice. And that is basically everything I have to teach you about these tiny little explosive god weapons. If you found any bit of this video useful, make sure to like this video so more people can find this guide, as I think grenades are so full of potential and it's such a shame to see them so underused. And hey, while you're at it, make sure to subscribe, because I have other in-depth guides like these planned to help make you an even better Phantom Forces player. But until next time, peace.